your head down, gentlemen.
Often the opposing earthworks lie within a few yards of each other.
Keep your head down, Jack. There he is. Ready, Mike? Got him.
Sergeant Johnny Green is a Confederate with the 9th Kentucky Infantry.
Anyone who shows his head above the trenches is sure to have 2 or 3 mini-balls come singing around his ears. But we soon got so accustomed to it that the boys grew very careless.
Keep your heads down, gentlemen. Keep your heads down, man. Hit your target, but keep your heads down.
For the past month in northern Georgia, Sherman and Johnston have been waging a deadly game of chess. Time and again, Sherman has tried to outflank the Confederate Army. Each time, his moves have been checked by Johnston. But in the process, the Confederate general has been forced to yield precious ground. By mid-June 1864, Johnston's army is backed up to within 20 miles of Atlanta. Caught in the crossfire in the campaign for Atlanta are the people of Cobb County, Georgia. Population 14,000. About 1/3 of those are slaves. Most of the residents are not wealthy plantation owners, but yeoman farmers who do not own slaves.
Hurry, girls, hurry!
Lucinda Casey is a widow.
That's it, let's go!
She struggles to keep the family farm while raising 3 children.
Louisa, get her. Louisa, will you help her, please? Come on, Nancy.
As Sherman's army approaches, Lucinda and daughters Louisa, Nancy, and Hazeltine quickly pack their belongings and flee to the safety of Atlanta. In June 1864, more than 100,000 soldiers from both Confederate and Union armies ravage Cobb County. At Lucinda Casey's home, nothing is spared. By mid-June, Sherman's army has moved within striking distance of his objective. Only one last mountain remains between Sherman and Atlanta. Kennesaw Mountain is over 1,800 feet high and 2 miles long. Some call it the Gibraltar of Georgia. For Johnston, Kennesaw's rocky ridges are the ideal place to halt Sherman. The summit is a 700-foot precipice called Big Kennesaw. To the south is a spur named Pigeon Hill. Further south is a ridge soon to be known as Cheatham Hill. With an imposing 7-mile line of defense, the Confederates will dare Sherman to attack. Just 20 miles beyond Kennesaw Mountain is Atlanta. A little after 8 a.m., the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain begins. 5,500 Federals surge up the steep slopes of Pigeon Hill, a knob just below Kennesaw Mountain.
Open up on them!
The attack is doomed from the start.
The Battle of Kennesaw Mountain goes against everything that Sherman has been talking about and has been trying to do. Why does he do? Why does he make this, assault, direct assault against dug-in troops on a high mountain? But why does he do this when it's clear that this is just not going to work?
To reach the Confederate earthworks on Cheatham Hill,
Forward! March!
the Federals must advance across an open field
In battery! Heave!
and up a steep incline.
Come on, man!
It is a 400-yard march into certain death.
Aim! Come on, close up, lads, to the work!
A soldier from Tennessee remarked, "The cannons bellowed like mad bulls." With their backs to Atlanta, the outnumbered Confederates atop Cheatham Hill are a dangerous, some say even a desperate foe. They believe victory and Southern independence can still be theirs. At the dead angle, the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain turns its most savage. One Confederate wrote, "Hell all broke loose in Georgia, sure enough." Despite their heroic charge, the Union attackers are driven back. Yet some of the Federal survivors refuse to leave Cheatham Hill. Just below the dead angle, they dig into a fold of the slope. The dip in the hill conceals the Yankees from the enemy just 30 yards above. For the next 3 days, they will be pinned down in the blistering heat of the Georgia summer. For Sherman's troops, the frontal assaults at the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain are nothing short of butchery. More than 3,000 Union soldiers are dead, wounded, or missing. Behind their earthworks, the Confederates are bloodied and battered, but they are victorious. First Lieutenant Thomas Maney sums up the Confederate defense, saying, "Stand we must, and stand we did." Slowly and cautiously, negotiating parties from both sides emerge. The officers agree to a 2-hour truce. Together, Union and Confederate soldiers begin the gruesome task of burying the dead. On day 7 of the standoff at Cheatham Hill, a detachment of Union soldiers emerges from the defenses to investigate an odd silence coming from the Confederate earthworks. Despite achieving a tactical victory, General Joseph Johnston has little choice but to withdraw his outnumbered Confederates. They form a defensive position along the northern reaches of Atlanta. Johnston's caution infuriates Confederate President Jefferson Davis. On July 17th, he relieves Johnston and replaces him with one of the most impressive officers in Lee's army. Lieutenant General John Bell Hood was wounded at Gettysburg and had his leg shot off at Chickamauga.
Sherman's immediate reaction is, this is great, this is terrific, because Hood has a reputation of being an aggressive general who is not going to just fall back the way Joe Johnston fell back. He's going to go on the offensive.
To take Atlanta, Sherman splits his force into three. The Army of the Tennessee swings to the southeast. The Army of the Ohio moves in from the northeast to destroy the Georgia Railroad, and the Army of the Cumberland crosses Peachtree Creek to attack from the north. Just as Sherman's troops cross Peachtree Creek, Hood proves he will indeed fight. The Union force is bloodied, but holds off Hood's savage attack. Hood's soldiers fall back to Atlanta. At the Battle of Peachtree Creek, the Confederates lose 2,500 men, nearly 3 times as many as the Union. Two days later, Hood again goes on the offensive. He sends almost his entire army on a 15-mile march to attack the flank and rear of the Union Army to the east of Atlanta. In what becomes known as the Battle of Atlanta, Union commander James B. McPherson is killed. McPherson is the highest-ranking Union officer to die in battle during the war. As at Peachtree Creek, the Confederates fight desperately. And again, Hood's beaten force is driven back to the defenses of Atlanta. In this single day of fighting, known as the Battle of Atlanta, Hood loses 8,000 more men. It is the bloodiest battle of the Atlanta campaign. While his troops recover from Hood's reckless attacks, Sherman turns to Union artillery. He vows to make the inside of Atlanta too hot to be endured. In the spring of 1864, people in the North had been confident that Grant's campaign in Virginia and Sherman's Atlanta campaign would bring an end to the war. Now, 3 months later, many are losing hope. Henry Raymond, the editor of the New York Times, writes, "Unless some prompt and bold step be now taken, all is lost." Like the Confederates in Virginia and Georgia, Lincoln, too, is under siege.
When military operations outside Richmond and Atlanta stalled, Lincoln thought his presidency was doomed. The Northern public turned against him, his administration, his generals. Lincoln faced tremendous dissent within the nation.
Many in Atlanta, including Hood himself, believe Sherman is in retreat and that the battle for Atlanta is won. Sherman is indeed on the move, but is not in retreat. Instead, he sends most of his Union force on a wide sweep, west and south of Atlanta. 20 miles south, at Jonesboro, they begin destroying the Macon and West Railroad. Their action will cut Atlanta off from the rest of the Confederacy. Hood again responds by attacking. At the town of Jonesboro, the Union force is ready. A Yankee soldier described the approaching Confederates as an infuriated mob. At Jonesboro, the Federals unleash what one soldier called a murderous fire of grape shrapnel and musketry. After desperately defending Atlanta for 6 weeks, the Confederates have little fight left. The 2-day clash at Jonesboro leaves the outnumbered and bloodied Confederates on the brink of exhaustion. The Federal rout leaves Hood and the battered Army of Tennessee no choice. They must abandon Atlanta. On November 15, 1864, Sherman's force of 60,000 begins a 250-mile march toward Savannah and the sea. By Sherman's design, the march to the sea is largely unopposed. Union soldiers freely and systematically descend upon farms. They take livestock and feed from the newly harvested crops. His soldiers tear up railroads and destroy anything that can be used to aid the Southern war effort. In the end, Sherman's march to the sea sends an undeniable message that rings throughout the entire Confederacy.
What Sherman is saying to the Confederates in marching to the sea is, you don't have a prayer. That if you don't surrender, if you don't quit this war, your infrastructure, your interior is going to be destroyed. There is no hope. You must quit. And he does. He gets into the psyche of the Confederate civilian and soldier. And I sometimes have argued that he got into that psyche of the Southerner so much that he's still there in some areas today.
On December 22nd, Sherman telegraphs Washington with news that Savannah has been captured. He offers the city and 25,000 bales of hay to the president as a Christmas present. Remarkably, while Sherman makes his march to the sea, Hood's force moves in the opposite direction, towards Nashville.
You have a Confederate army of some 30,000 that is still mobile and still a threat. And truly, it is Hood's army that is the last hope of anything for the Confederacy. And it is a very, very desperate time.
Once again, Hood will fight, this time along the Harpeth River in the small town of Franklin, Tennessee. As he did time and again in Atlanta, Hood orders his men into a frontal assault. Hood's Confederates make a desperate, some say suicidal, attack on the entrenched Union army.
Hood's army is essentially destroyed, crippled on the field south of Franklin. What you see at Franklin is the last gasp. What you see at Franklin is what you don't see anywhere else. What you see at Franklin are 20,000 Confederate soldiers who have been at Shiloh, Perryville, Murfreesboro, Chickamauga, Chattanooga, Peachtree Creek, Atlanta, Jonesboro, Kennesaw, They've been everywhere. What you saw at Franklin was a very emotional, dark, sad look into who we were as Americans. That you had this one group of men who had been through hell and back, who were willing to just put it all on the line one last time. Surrender was not an option.
The slaughter at Franklin prompts memories of Pickett's charge at Gettysburg. The Confederates lose 6,200 men, including 6 generals. Private Sam Watkins of the 1st Tennessee called it the blackest page in the history of the war. 2 weeks later, what is left of Hood's army is soundly defeated at Nashville. For all intent and purposes, the Battle of Nashville is the end of the Army of Tennessee. Its commander, John Bell Hood, soon resigns. With his nemesis now subdued in Tennessee, Sherman launches a final punishing blow. In January 1865, his force turns north from Savannah and blazes a path of destruction through the Carolinas.
Well, what Sherman does is he wins in the Western theater, and then he moves into the East. When he's going through the Carolinas toward Virginia, that's the Eastern theater. So the West indeed comes east.
To Sherman's north is Petersburg, where Lee's battered Army of Northern Virginia has been under siege for 9 months.
One of the things that Lee had to think about, and almost the chief thing that Lee had to think about, was the fact that Sherman was coming with 100,000 veterans, and that within a few weeks, Sherman's 100,000 men would join Grant.
On April 2nd, 1865, Lee evacuates Petersburg and Richmond, escaping in the only direction he can, west. At Appomattox Courthouse, his exhausted Army of Northern Virginia is run down by Union cavalry. On April 9th, Lee surrenders to Grant. 17 days later, in Durham, North Carolina, Sherman accepts the surrender of 30,000 Confederates, including what was left of the Army of Tennessee.